Welcome and settle in. Tonight, we step softly into another time, to a place of timbered walls, worn cobblestones, and the gentle fragrance of herbs hanging from low wooden beams. It is the 14th century. We find ourselves in a small village, far from the rush of great cities. Here, the pace of life is measured not by the hands of a clock, but by the toll of the church bell, the slow arc of the sun, and the turning of the seasons. Our guide through this week will be a village apothecary, a keeper of remedies, a mixer of tinctures, a listener to ailments and troubles. Their shop is a place of quiet work, shelves lined with jars of dried leaves and roots, the rhythmic scrape of pestle against mortar, the faint wisp of steam rising from a pot of steeping herbs. We will follow them from the first light of Monday to the slow sunset of Sunday. Each day will bring small tasks and simple interactions. A visit from a farmer with a sore shoulder, the delivery of honey from a beekeeper, the careful drying of meadowsweet by the window. There is no rush here, no loud market crowds or urgent news from distant lands. Only the measured comfort of daily life, where each action is given time and care. So let your shoulders soften and your breath find an easy rhythm. The world outside can wait. Tonight, we will walk the worn paths of a medieval village, listening to the soft sounds of work, the quiet laughter of neighbors, and the ever-present whisper of the wind through the eaves. Our week begins now. Monday, the morning grind. The day begins slowly. The apothecary wakes to the muffled chime of the church bell in the square, the sound softened by the thickness of the thatched roof overhead. The room smells faintly of beeswax and the faintly bitter smoke from last night's fire. Rising from bed, they pull on a woolen tunic and wash their face in the cold water, kept in a glazed basin by the window. Outside, a lone cart rattles over the cobblestones, its driver humming softly to himself. In the small main room of the shop, the air is cool and still. The apothecary moves with unhurried steps, lighting the small hearth first, dry kindling catching with a soft hiss, the fire growing into a steady glow. Over the flame, a small copper pot is set to heat water for the first tea of the day. On the workbench, a large stone mortar and its heavy pestle weight. Today's first task is the grinding of dried rosemary, lavender blossoms, and fennel seed into a fine, fragrant powder. The apothecary tips the first measure of rosemary into the mortar. The leaves are brittle from weeks of drying, and as the pestle begins its slow circular motion, they crackle faintly. The air fills with a warm, resinous scent, like a summer hillside baked in the sun. Next comes lavender, tiny, pale purple blossoms that fall softly into the bowl with a sound no louder than dry rain on parchment. As the pestle moves, their perfume is released, clean and floral, with the faintest whisper of sweetness. Fennel seeds follow, round and ridged, with a gentle anise fragrance that feels both familiar and exotic. Slowly, all three mingle together, becoming something new, a powder that will be used to make small sachets for warding off moths in linen chests, or to be steeped into a calming tea for restless sleepers. The apothecary pauses now and then, leaning close to check the texture of the mixture between thumb and forefinger. Outside, the sounds of the village are beginning to grow, a dog barking, the rhythmic chop of a woodcutter's axe, the muffled laughter of two children running past the shop door. The first customer arrives not long after. It is Mistress Anwin, a woman of advancing years whose joints trouble her most in the colder months. She leans on a carved walking stick, her hood pulled low. The apothecary greets her softly, inviting her to sit, while a jar of comfort salve is brought down from the shelf. The ointment is thick and green, smelling faintly of pine resin beeswax, and the rich leafiness of the comfrey root from which it is made. The apothecary spoons a generous portion into a small clay pot, wraps it in a strip of linen, and ties it with a thin length of twine before passing it into Mistress Anwen's hands. A few coins change hands, and she departs slowly, pausing to thank the apothecary for last week's herbal tea which, she says, has been helping her sleep. A short while later comes Ewan, a farmer whose hands are rough and cracked from long days working in the fields. He needs a salve of calendula and lanolin, something to soothe and mend skin worn raw by the chill winds. The apothecary measures the bright golden ointment into a tin and offers a few words of gentle advice: to wear wool gloves when possible, and to rub the balm in at night, so it can work while he sleeps. When there are no customers, the apothecary works quietly, replenishing the jars, wiping the workbench smooth with a clean cloth, arranging dried herb bundles so that their stems are even and their ties neat. Sunlight moves slowly across the floorboards as the hours pass, and a warm, golden light settles over the shelves of jars, making their contents glow faintly in shades of green, gold, and brown. In the late afternoon, a pot of tea is brewed, lemon balm and chamomile, pale and fragrant. The apothecary sits for a moment by the small window, sipping slowly, watching as a pair of sparrows peck at the cobblestones in search of crumbs. The mortar and pestle are set aside, the scales covered, the jars capped tightly. The day has been quiet, but productive. As the shadows lengthen, the shop door is bolted and the oil lamp is lit. The warm, steady glow fills the small room, turning the wooden beams and shelves a deeper shade of amber. Somewhere outside, the church bell marks the hour for evening prayers. Inside, the air still carries the faint perfume of lavender and rosemary, a reminder of the morning's work. The apothecary sits at the bench a while longer, perhaps mending a quill or turning the pages of an herbal manuscript, before finally banking the fire for the night and climbing the stairs to rest. Tuesday, gathering the green. The morning breaks with a pale, pearly light over the village. The air holds a faint coolness, the kind that feels damp against the skin, as though the dew hasn't yet decided whether to stay or lift away. A thin mist drapes itself across the low fields, turning the hedgerows and distant cottages into softened shapes, like a painting blurred by breath on glass. Inside the apothecary's home, the day begins with small, habitual motions. The fire in the hearth is coaxed back to life from its bed of ash with the help of thin kindling and a few well-placed breaths. Water from the well, fetched the evening before, is poured into a small pot, set above the flames to warm for tea. A heel of bread, kept wrapped in cloth to guard against staleness, is sliced and spread with a little honey from a jar brought by the beekeeper last month. Today will be a day for gathering. Before leaving, the apothecary prepares a satchel of woven wool, sturdy and well-worn. Into it goes a small knife with a wooden handle, a pair of shears with a simple iron hinge, a length of twine, and a few folded cloths for wrapping more delicate plants. A small wax pouch for coins is also tucked inside, for there may be opportunity to buy herbs or roots from farmers along the way. Stepping outside, the apothecary locks the shop door behind them, though the village is a place of trust. The early streets are quiet save for the distant sound of a mill wheel turning, the slow creak of wooden gears carrying on the still air. A pair of geese cross the lane ahead, their feet slapping against the damp ground, their necks swaying with dignified importance. The path to the meadows lies just beyond the churchyard. Here, the grass is still jeweled with dew, and each step releases the scent of damp earth. The apothecary walks with measured pace, scanning the hedgerows for the first hints of what is to be gathered today. Yarrow is the first find. Clusters of white flowers, their flat-top heads rising above feathery leaves. The apothecary kneels, knife in hand, and cuts the stems cleanly, careful to leave enough that the plant may regrow. Yarrow will be dried for teas to ease fevers, and for poultices to help slow bleeding. It has a clean, slightly bitter scent, almost like crushed apple skins. Further along, near the banks of a small stream, a patch of meadowsweet blooms. Its creamy flowers release a fragrance that is both sweet and faintly spicy, reminiscent of almond and fresh hay. Meadowsweet is prized for soothing aches and fevers, and its leaves, when crushed, hold a sharp, medicinal aroma. The apothecary gathers it gently, mindful that the plant's beauty makes it a favorite among the children who play nearby. At the stream's edge, the damp soil offers another gift: water mint, its square stems and violet flowers unmistakable. The scent rises sharply when the leaves are touched, cool and invigorating. A handful is clipped, enough for infusions to aid digestion, and for adding a refreshing note to the more bitter medicinal brews. The day warms slightly as the apothecary moves on toward the forest edge. Here, in the partial shade beneath tall oaks, grow the tender green shoots of wood sorrel, their heart-shaped leaves folding slightly under the touch. The taste is bright and lemony, a welcome addition to spring tonics meant to wake the body after winter's heaviness. Only a modest amount is gathered, enough for the week's remedies. Birdsong fills the air, layered and overlapping. The rhythmic tapping of a woodpecker echoes from deeper in the forest. Somewhere overhead, a pigeon claps its wings before settling into a new perch. By midday, the satchel is nearly half full. The apothecary rests on a fallen log, unwrapping a small piece of cheese and the remaining slice of bread from earlier. Eating slowly, they watch a line of ants navigate over the uneven bark, each carrying something far larger than itself. The sound of the stream nearby blends with the whisper of wind through the leaves, creating a background that seems to breathe in time with the watcher. In the afternoon, attention turns to gathering roots, a task that requires both patience and care. Near the edges of tilled fields, where the soil is looser, the apothecary finds valerian, its tall stems tipped with pale, pink blossoms. With a knife, the soil is loosened, revealing the knotted root below. The smell is earthy and slightly musky, a scent known for its calming properties. This root will be cleaned, sliced, and dried slowly over gentle heat. Another stop is made near a farmer's fence to speak with an older man tending his goats. They exchange a few pleasantries, and the farmer produces a small bundle of angelica root he had unearthed while working his vegetable patch. In return for a few coins and a promise of a future tonic for his wife's cough, the apothecary adds it to the satchel. Angelica, with its warm, aromatic quality, is valued in syrups for colds and in tinctures to settle the stomach. The last stop before returning home is a sunlit clearing where St. John's wort blooms, bright yellow flowers with tiny black dots on their petals. They are carefully gathered, for they will be infused in oil to make a soothing balm for bruises and sore muscles. The flowers release a faint resinous scent, sticky on the fingers. The walk back to the village is slower. The weight of the satchel is a satisfying reminder of the day's work. As the rooftops come into view, the church bell rings for late afternoon, its sound carrying far over the fields. Inside the shop, the apothecary lays out the day's harvest on the long workbench. Each plant is arranged according to its needs, some to be hung from the rafters in small tied bundles, others to be spread on clean cloths to dry flat. Roots are washed gently in a basin of water, the dirt swirling away in cloudy eddies, then set on racks near the hearth where the warmth will draw out their moisture slowly. The scent in the room shifts as the hours pass, from the sharp freshness of mint to the deep earthiness of roots, and finally to the faintly sweet perfume of drying blossoms. The light through the windows fades to a softer gold, then to the muted blue of evening. A simple supper is taken, pottage made from barley, leeks, and a small slice of salt pork, accompanied by a cup of small ale. After eating, the apothecary writes a few notes in the ledger, what was gathered in what quantities and where it was found. These records will guide future harvests and ensure nothing is taken too heavily from a single place. By lamplight, the bundles are checked once more. The room now feels like a storeroom of summer, with the green life of the fields and woods preserved against the colder days to come. Outside, the village settles into quiet. A dog barks distantly, and then even that sound fades. The apothecary extinguishes the lamp, leaving only the faint red glow of the banked fire. In the darkness, the scents of the day linger, weaving into dreams of meadows, streams, and the steady rhythm of the gathering walk. Wednesday, market day. The day begins with the sound of the bell from the church tower, one measured ring for each passing quarter hour, then a longer series to announce the coming of morning prayers. The air is cooler than yesterday, with a faint breeze threading through the shutters and carrying the smell of baking bread from the baker's oven down the street. Market day comes but once a week, and it is always busy. The apothecary rises before the sun is fully above the rooftops, knowing that the early hours are best for finding what's freshest and for securing the rarer goods before they're gone. The first task is to prepare for trade. On the long workbench, the apothecary selects jars and small cloth bags filled with herbs dried from earlier months. Lavender for calming, chamomile for rest, dried mint for digestion, and marigold petals for skin salves. A small tin of ointment, already prepared from a mixture of beeswax and rose oil, is wrapped in cloth for a favored customer. Coins are counted and placed into a leather purse, some for buying supplies, some for paying debts to those who deliver materials the apothecary cannot gather alone. Finally, a small cart is readied. Its wheels creak as they're tested, and the woven basket on top is lined with clean linen. It will carry goods for barter. A few jars of preserved rose hips, bundles of thyme, and 2 vials of poppy syrup, sealed with wax and marked with a careful hand. The lane to the marketplace is already busy with movement. Farmers lead carts laden with vegetables, their wheels leaving shallow grooves in the dirt. A woman with a wicker basket hurries past, the smell of fresh cheese wafting from under its cloth cover. Somewhere ahead, a peddler calls out, his voice rising above the clop of hooves and the murmur of early shoppers. The morning light falls in shifting patterns between the houses, glancing off windows and catching in the curls of smoke that rise from chimneys. The village square soon comes into view, a wide space where the stalls form an irregular ring. In the center stands a tall post, from which notices and proclamations are nailed, some new, some weathered and curling at the edges. A few children chase each other in circles around it, their laughter cutting through the hum of the crowd. The first stop is the herbalist's stall, not another apothecary, but a woman who specializes in drying and selling plants for cooking and brewing. She greets the apothecary warmly, her hands busy tying together bundles of rosemary and sage. They exchange pleasantries about the weather before turning to business. She has brought in a small supply of bay leaves from a relative who lives further south. These are rare here, and the apothecary purchases a few sprigs for making aromatic oils. Next is the dairy stall. The cheesemaker's wife offers a wheel of soft goat cheese wrapped in leaves. This will serve not only as a personal treat, but also as a possible barter item. In exchange, the apothecary offers a jar of thyme and a small packet of marigold petals. The cheesemaker's daughter has been plagued with a rash, and the petals will help soothe it when steeped into a wash. One of the most anticipated visits is to the spice merchant, a man who travels between larger towns and brings with him the scents of distant lands. His stall is alive with color and fragrance. Small cones of cinnamon bark, pale threads of saffron in tiny wax packets, peppercorns that smell sharp and rich. Today he has something even rarer, a small pouch of dried ginger root. It is expensive, but the apothecary knows its value in treating nausea and warming the body during illness. After a short negotiation, coins change hands, and the ginger is placed carefully in the basket. Market day is as much about talk as it is about trade. The apothecary stops to speak with the town midwife, who mentions that 2 expectant mothers are due within the next month. She requests more raspberry leaf tea, known for easing childbirth, and arranges to collect it later in the week. Nearby, an old man is selling beeswax candles. He leans on his stall between customers, telling the apothecary of a small stand of elder trees he passed on his way from the next village. Their berries, he says, will be ripe within a fortnight, a detail the apothecary makes a mental note to confirm. Even though most of the market smells of fresh bread, herbs, and sweet fruit, the butcher's corner carries a more robust scent. Here, the apothecary purchases a small packet of suet, not for cooking, but for making certain ointments where animal fat is the base for absorbing the medicinal qualities of herbs. The butcher wraps it in parchment, and they exchange a few words about the mildness of the season. While passing a stall selling woven baskets and wooden spoons, the apothecary notices a small carved mortar and pestle made from dark, dense wood. Though not as smooth as the stone one already in the workshop, it would be useful for grinding softer materials while traveling. After some bartering, and the inclusion of a bundle of lavender as part of the payment, the tool is added to the day's acquisitions. As the sun climbs, the market grows louder, more crowded. The apothecary finds a quiet corner near the well to rest, taking out a small cloth-wrapped parcel of bread and goat cheese. A nearby minstrel plays a slow tune on a pipe, his hat on the ground to catch coins from passing listeners. The air is warm now, carrying the mingled scents of baking pies, cut herbs, and the faint tang of iron from the blacksmith's forge down the lane. By early afternoon, the goods are purchased, trades made, and news gathered. The walk home is slower, the weight of the cart more noticeable over the uneven cobbles. The apothecary greets familiar faces along the way. A young boy carrying a bundle of firewood, an elderly woman knitting as she sits in the sun, the parish clerk hurrying with a stack of papers under one arm. Once back in the shop, the new ingredients are carefully unpacked. The ginger is stored in a small ceramic jar with a tight lid. The bay leaves hung in a cool, dry spot. The beeswax candles are placed on a shelf above the workbench, their warm scent filling the air. The suet is rendered gently in a small pan over the hearth, producing a clear fat that will be kept for making salves. The carved wooden mortar and pestle is rinsed, dried, and given a light rub of oil to protect the grain. As the light fades, the apothecary works at the bench, crushing dried mint and chamomile together to make a new batch of calming tea blend. The rhythmic scrape of pestle against mortar fills the quiet space. Outside, the market stalls are being dismantled, the clatter of wooden poles and the murmur of departing voices drifting through the open window. A final note is made in the ledger. What was bought what was sold, and any important conversations from the day. The pages are speckled with faint smudges of spice and wax, the marks of a life lived in the mingling of trade and craft. The shutters are drawn, the door barred. The scent of the spice merchant's goods still lingers faintly in the air, mingling with the herbal warmth of the shop. The apothecary takes a simple supper, pottage again, this time with fresh leeks from the market, and settles in a quiet thought, already considering tomorrow's tasks. Outside, the village grows still. Somewhere, a dog gives a single bark before settling down for the night. The market square, so lively only hours before, is now empty, its cobbles dark and cool under the moonlight. Thursday, in the workshop, the first light of morning falls softly through the shutters, catching on the edges of glass bottles and small brass weights that rest on the workbench. Outside, the air is still, the kind of quiet that belongs only to the earliest hours, before the village is fully awake. Thursday is not a day for errands. It is a day for work within the shop, for turning yesterday's market finds into medicines, teas, and tinctures. The apothecary rises with purpose, knowing that uninterrupted time is rare and valuable. The hearth is lit first. The smell of kindling catching fire mixes with the faint scent of lavender from a bundle hanging nearby. Water is set to warm in a wide copper pot, ready for steeping herbs. On the main table, jars of ingredients are gathered in an orderly row. The bay leaves bought from the herbalist, ginger root from the spice merchant, and the beeswax candles, their golden sheen soft in the dim light. The ledger from yesterday is open to the fresh page for Thursday. Today's tasks are written out in a careful hand. Render suet into ointment base. Prepare ginger tincture. Blend raspberry leaf tea for the midwife. Make fresh batch of cough syrup. Restock calming salve. The list is not long, but each task is slow by nature, requiring steady hands and patient attention. The first task is to finish rendering the suet bought from a butcher. A small iron pot is placed over the low fire, the suet cut into small pieces so it melts evenly. As it warms, the scent changes, from the faint sharpness of raw fat to a softer, almost sweet smell. The apothecary schemes away any impurities with a wooden spoon, letting the clear liquid fat gather in the pot. Once it is ready, it is poured through a clean linen cloth into a ceramic jar, where it will cool to a pale, solid ointment base. This will be used for salves that must cling to the skin and protect wounds from damp and dirt. The ginger root is brought out next, its noble surface dry and slightly fibrous to the touch. A small portion is cut away, the pale interior releasing a warm, spicy scent as the knife slices through. The pieces are pounded gently in the new wooden mortar bought yesterday. The sound of pestle against wood is softer than stone, a muted thud that seems fitting for the quiet of the morning. The crushed ginger is placed into a glass jar, and strong wine spirit is poured over it until the pieces are fully covered. This will draw out the warming, stimulating properties of the ginger. The jar is sealed with a wax stopper and placed on the upper shelf where it will be shaken daily for the next fortnight. The apothecary turns to the bundles of dried raspberry leaves hanging from a beam near the window. They are crisp now, and the faint scent of summer still lingers in them. The leaves are stripped from their stems and crumbled into a large wooden bowl. To this, a few dried rose petals are added, not for their medicinal value, but for the gentle fragrance and the way they lighten the blend's appearance. The mix is portioned into small linen bags, each tied with a simple twist of twine. A note is made in the ledger: raspberry leaf tea for midwife, 3 bags prepared, to be collected Sunday. Cough syrup is made from honey and herbs that soothe the throat and ease breathing. The apothecary measures out a thick portion of honey into a pan and warms it slowly so it flows like golden silk. Into it goes a handful of thyme, a pinch of dried horehound, and a scattering of chopped licorice root. The herbs release their oils into the honey, filling the air with a scent that is both sweet and medicinal. After a long, slow simmer, the mixture is strained, and the dark, fragrant syrup is poured into small glass vials. Each is sealed with wax and labeled in neat handwriting. This batch will serve through the damp days ahead, when the cool evenings bring a rise in coughs and chest complaints. The final task of the morning is to prepare a calming salve, a blend of lavender, chamomile, and a touch of valerian root, all work into the suet base prepared earlier. The dried flowers are pounded in the stone mortar until their scent deepens, then slowly mixed into the softened fat. Beeswax from yesterday's purchase is grated in, giving the salve a firmer texture, so it can be kept in small pots without melting in the hand. The mixture is stirred slowly until smooth, then spooned into clay jars. The pale cream inside carries the unmistakable scent of summer fields and quiet evenings, a reminder that medicine is not only for the body, but for the mind as well. By the time the salve jars are cooling on the workbench, the sun is high. The apothecary steps outside, stretching stiff shoulders, and sits on the bench by the shop door. The street is lively now. A cart rattles past, carrying barrels of ale. Two children skip down the lane with lengths of ribbon trailing behind them. A dog dozes in a patch of sunlight near the blacksmith's doorway. Lunch is simple: bread from the baker, a wedge of goat cheese from yesterday's market, and a few fresh herbs picked from the small garden at the back of the shop. The air is warm and still, and for a moment the apothecary simply watches the patterns of light moving over the cobbles. The second half of the day is quieter still. The apothecary works with smaller, more delicate tasks, sorting dried mint leaves by size and quality, sifting powdered valerian to remove coarse pieces, and polishing the brass scales until they shine faintly in the dim light. Occasionally, a customer arrives, a young woman seeking something for a restless baby, an older man asking for a remedy for aching joints. Each is served with the same patient care, small parcels of herbs wrapped in paper and tied with string, along with quiet instructions for their use. Before the light begins to fade, the apothecary takes the opportunity to rearrange the shop's shelves. The jars are grouped not only by their use, but by how often they are needed. Wound dressings within easy reach, rarer spices higher up where they can be protected from casual handling. The air smells of many things at once: the sharp green of dried mint, the warm sweetness of honey, the faint resin scent of the beeswax candles. Each shelf feels like a chapter in a book, separate, but all telling part of the same story. When the shadows grow long, the apothecary returns to the ledger. The day's work is written down, tinctures started, teas blended, salves made, syrups bottled. A small sketch of a ginger root is added beside the entry, perhaps for no reason other than the pleasure of marking the day's labor in more than words. The shutters are closed, the hearth banked for the night. The wooden mortar is cleaned and set to dry, and the jars are all in their places. Outside, the street is quiet again. The only sound is the faint creak of the sign above the shop door as the evening wind stirs it. The apothecary takes a final moment to breathe in the mingled scents of the workshop, the day's proof of labor well spent, before stepping into the cool night air. Friday, a call from the manor. The morning begins not with the sound of the apothecary's own hearth or the faint clinking of jars, but with a knock at the shop door before the shutters are even opened. The knock is steady, deliberate, the kind that belongs to someone with a purpose, perhaps even a little urgency. When the door is opened, the cool air of early dawn flows in, along with the sight of man in the manor's livery, a deep blue with silver trim. His boots are clean despite the dirt road, and his voice is polite but carries the faintest edge of concern. The housekeeper asks if you might come at once. He says, "There is a matter for your skill." The apothecary has been called to the manor before. It is not far, perhaps a quarter of an hour's walk uphill, beyond the cluster of cottages. But the large stone house feels like a separate world from the village. The satchel is packed with practiced speed, small jars of ointments, vials of tinctures, packets of dried herbs wrapped in linen. A roll of clean bandages is tucked in beside a bundle of sage for burning, and a small stoppered bottle of poppy syrup is carefully cushioned in wool. Before leaving, the apothecary pauses to add 2 items that are not always carried: a small pewter spoon and a sprig of rosemary, its green scent bright against the morning chill. The shop is left shuttered but unlocked, a signal to regular customers that the apothecary is away on business and will return by midday. The road climbs gently, passing hedgerows where dew still clings to the leaves. Birds call to one another in the hedges, their notes sharp in the cool air. The village falls away behind, replaced by open fields divided by low stone walls. From the crest of the hill, the manor comes into view, a tall, square house of pale stone, its windows catching the soft gold of the morning sun. The roof is steep and slate gray, with a small line of smoke rising from one of the chimneys. The path curves through an iron gate, past a stretch of gravel drive, and ends at wide oak doors, where the housekeeper waits. She is a tall woman with a brisk, capable air, but today her expression is thoughtful, perhaps even troubled. The house smells faintly of beeswax polish and something richer, perhaps the remnants of last night's supper. The floors are wide planks, worn smooth by generations of footsteps. Sunlight falls through tall windows onto rugs woven in deep reds and blues. The housekeeper speaks in a low voice as she leads the apothecary up the staircase. "It's the young mistress," she says. "She's been pale for days, and last night there was a fainting spell. The physician will come, but not until tomorrow. I thought it best to send for you in the meantime." They pass down a long corridor lined with portraits. Some faces look stern, others kindly. All seem to watch silently as the two make their way toward the end of the hall. The room is bright but hushed. Curtains are drawn back to let in the light, yet the air inside is cool, the fire on the hearth barely more than embers. In the bed lies a young woman, perhaps no more than 17, her hair loose over the pillow. Her cheeks are pale, though there is a faint flush at the temples, and her hands are clasped tightly together on the coverlet. She looks up as the apothecary approaches, managing a small smile. "It's nothing serious," she says softly, though her voice has a breathless quality. "Only my head has been light, and sometimes I cannot seem to catch a full breath." The apothecary asks gentle questions. "When did it begin? Has there been fever? Pain in the chest? How have her nights been?" She answers with care, her voice steady but quiet. The apothecary takes her wrist lightly, feeling the pulse, a little fast but not weak. The eyes are clear, though perhaps a touch too bright. A hand placed lightly at her throat feels the steady rise and fall of her breathing. It is not illness that stands out, but exhaustion, the kind that settles into the bones and will not lift. The housekeeper, when asked quietly, admits that the young mistress has been practicing for an upcoming recital, playing the pianoforte for hours each day, and attending to endless lessons besides. The apothecary suggests rest, not only in body but in mind. A tonic of hawthorn and rosehip is prepared from the satchel, poured into the pewter spoon, and given in small sips. A cloth soaked in cool lavender water is placed on her brow. From the sprig of rosemary, a few leaves are crushed between the fingers, so their scent fills the air, sharp, clean, and lifting. For the mind, the apothecary says with a small smile. The housekeeper is given a mixture of chamomile and lemon balm to steep as tea, to be taken twice daily. No poppy syrup is left. It is not needed here. What she needs is not deep sleep, but the kind of rest that comes from stepping away from too many demands. While the tea is prepared in the kitchens, the apothecary stands by the tall window, looking out over the gardens. The paths curve in quiet lines through clipped hedges and clusters of late summer flowers. Beyond them, the fields slope gently back toward the village, the rooftops small and distant. The house is still around them, the ticking of a clock in the hallway the only sound. When the tea arrives, its steam carries the mild, grassy scent of chamomile, mingled with the faint sweetness of lemon balm. The young mistress is settled with her tea and promises, at least half playfully, to rest. The housekeeper walks the apothecary back to the front doors, pressing into their hands a small cloth-wrapped bundle, bread still warm from the kitchen, and a wedge of soft cheese. The walk back down the hill feels lighter, the morning air warmer now as the sun climbs higher. The village comes into view once more, its sounds carrying faintly upward. The clink of a hammer at the smithy, the calls of traders in the street. The shutters are opened, letting in the brightness of midday. The scents of the workshop, honey, beeswax, dried herbs, seem stronger after the cool air outside. The satchel is unpacked, the jars return to their shelves. Before resuming the day's usual work, the apothecary notes in the ledger: Friday, visit to manor, advised rest and light tonic, chamomile and lemon balm left with housekeeper. A small rosemary sprig is pressed between the pages, its scent lingering long after the ink dries. As the day winds down, there is a quiet satisfaction in having been of help, even in a small way. The work of an apothecary is often about small things: a cup of tea, a few leaves of common plant, a reminder to rest. Yet these small things, given at the right time, can be as powerful as any rare medicine. Outside, the sun sets behind the hill where the manor stands, the stone walls catching the last light. In the shop, the apothecary sits by the hearth, the rosemary scent still faint in the air, and writes one last line in the ledger before closing it for the night. Quiet service given, and received in kind. Saturday, the village fair. The first sound of Saturday is not the usual murmur of the shop, but the faint ringing of a handbell outside. Sharp, cheerful, and unmistakable. It carries up the street, followed by the deep, rhythmic clop of cart wheels on cobblestone. Today is the day of the village fair. The shop is opened earlier than usual, for though the fair will bring most villagers to the green, there will be visitors passing through all day. A few jars of herb salve are set on the counter, their lids polished bright. A basket of small lavender sachets is placed by the door, tied with scraps of ribbon in shades of blue and green. The apothecary takes a moment to check the satchel, not for a visit to a manor this time, but for the fair itself. A few vials of peppermint oil, a roll of bandages, and a pouch of powdered ginger are added. Crowds and excitement can bring fainting spells or sour stomachs, and it is best to be ready. The path to the green winds past cottages decorated with sprigs of flowers tucked into their doorframes. Children run ahead, their shoes scattering the last of the dew from the grass. From a distance comes the mixed hum of voices, the brassy note of a tin whistle, and the steady beat of a drum. When the green comes into view, it is transformed. Striped tents and stalls form a loose circle, their bright colors rippling in the breeze. The smell of fresh bread, roasting meat, and sweet cider drifts through the air, mingled with the sharper scent of trampled grass. Near the entrance is the baker's stall, where loaves as round as wheels sit beside long, golden braids of bread. The baker, his apron dusted with flour, calls cheerfully to customers, offering samples of spiced buns warm from the oven. A little farther on, a cooper displays barrels of all sizes, their wooden staves smooth and gleaming. Beyond that, a cloth merchant's table ripples with folded bolts in deep indigo, russet, and soft cream, each catching the light in its own way. The apothecary pauses at a pottery stall, where shallow bowls are stacked in neat towers. The glaze on one catches the eye, a pale green that pools darker in the curves, like water in a hollow stone. It is set aside with the promise to return for it before the day is done. At the far end of the green, the herbalist from the next village over has set up her table. Her jars are neatly labeled, her bundles of dried plants tied with twine. She greets the apothecary warmly, and the two exchange news. The late summer has been kind to the mint. The yarrow came early this year, and there is talk of a wet autumn ahead. Nearby, the blacksmith demonstrates the shaping of a small iron hook. Each strike of the hammer sends a ringing note into the warm air, and children watch with wide eyes as the glowing metal is quenched in a bucket of water. At midday, the crowd thickens. The apothecary stops at a cider stand where the drink is ladled into wooden cups. The cider is cool, with a crisp sweetness that cuts through the warmth of the day. A bench near the edge of the green offers a place to sit and watch. From here, the fair unfolds like a slow-turning wheel. People passing with baskets of goods, a dog trotting at its owner's heel, the ripple of laughter from a group near the fiddler's stand. The music drifts on the breeze, light and quick, carrying a rhythm that seems to fit the steady movement of the crowd. Not long after sitting down, a young boy stumbles nearby, his knee scraped on the packed earth. His mother is quick to comfort him, but the apothecary opens the satchel and offers a strip of clean linen and a dab of salve. The boy sniffs, but sits still while the scrape is cleaned and wrapped, and he manages a small grin when given a lavender sachet for bravery. Later, a woman from the neighboring hamlet approaches, speaking quietly of a lingering cough. The apothecary suggests a mixture of thyme and honey, promising to prepare it and send it with the herbalist on her way home. As the sun shifts westward, the light takes on a warmer tone, laying soft shadows across the stalls. The smell of roasted chestnuts drifts from a brazier, and somewhere a storyteller's voice rises and falls in a steady rhythm. The apothecary finally returns to the pottery stall and claims the pale green bowl. It is wrapped in brown paper and tied with a length of string, fitting neatly into the satchel beside the unused vials of peppermint oil. By late afternoon, the crowd thins. The green is scattered with bits of straw and the flattened outlines of where stalls once stood. Musicians pack away their instruments. The cooper stacks the last of his barrels onto a cart. The walk home feels slower, the air cooling as evening comes on. Passing the bakery, the apothecary steps inside for a final treat. A small loaf flecked with rosemary, its scent warm and savory. The shutters are drawn in the fading light, the shop filled once more with its familiar scents. The bowl is unwrapped and set on the counter, its green glaze catching the lamplight. The satchel is emptied, and the unused supplies returned to their places. A pot of thyme tea is brewed, more for the pleasure of its scent than any ailment, and the apothecary sits by the window to watch the last streaks of daylight fade from the sky. In the ledger, the day is recorded simply. Saturday, fair day, small remedies given, green bowl purchased, weather fine. As darkness settles, the village is quiet once more. Only a few voices carry in the distance, and the air holds the faint echo of the day's music. The apothecary rests, knowing that the fare will leave its traces: the taste of cider, the feel of warm bread in the hand, the sound of the blacksmith's hammer, for many days to come. And tomorrow, as always, will bring its own small work. Sunday, a quiet day by the river. Sunday begins without haste. There is no need to light the lamps early, for the sun drifts lazily above the rooftops, casting a pale gold through the shutters. The air is cool, still carrying the faint scent of yesterday's fare: trampled grass, bread crusts, and the faintest trace of wood smoke from the cooking fires on the green. The apothecary wakes slowly, the quiet of the morning wrapping the shop in a sense of unspoken agreement. Today will be gentle. Instead of the usual clink of glass jars and scrape of the pestle, the morning opens with the soft shuffle of feet across the wooden floor. The shutters are eased open, and the light spills in like water, touching the counter, the shelves, the bundles of drying herbs that hang from beams. A small pot of oat porridge is set to cook over the fire, stirred slowly until it thickens, then sweetened with a spoon of honey and a sprinkling of crushed hazelnuts. It is eaten standing by the window, watching a pair of swallows dip and turn in the morning air. The village is hushed in a way it never is on market days or during the week's bustle. A few early risers move about, a woman drawing water from the well, a man carrying a small basket of eggs. The sound of church bells carries faintly from across the fields, a slow, measured ringing that seems to mark not just the time, but the very pace of the day. The apothecary locks the shop door behind and sets off with a simple plan: to walk to the river. The footpath to the river begins just beyond the last cottages, where the cobblestones give way to packed earth. The grass on either side is still tipped with dew, and here and there wildflowers nod in the breeze. A single bee works busily among the purple heads of clover, the low hum barely louder than the rustle of the leaves overhead. As the path curves, the village slips quietly out of sight. The smell of the air changes, a cool freshness that speaks of water ahead, mingled with the scent of damp earth. The river is not a grand one. It moves at a steady, unhurried pace, its surface catching the morning light in shifting, silver ripples. On the far bank, a line of willows leans forward, their long branches trailing like fingers in the water. The apothecary finds the usual place to sit, a smooth, flat stone warmed by years of sun and rain. From here, the world feels held in balance. The gentle rush of the current, the quiet splash of fish breaking the surface, the faint whisper of wind in the reeds. Though today is not meant for work, it is impossible to ignore the clusters of meadowsweet blooming just beyond the stone. Their cream-colored blossoms give off a sweet, almond-like fragrance, and the apothecary gathers a small handful, enough to dry for tea against headaches. Nearby, water mint grows thick along the bank, its leaves releasing a cool, sharp scent when rubbed between the fingers. A few sprigs are picked to bring home, both for their flavor and for the way they will freshen the shop's air when set in a small jar. Downstream, the quiet is broken by the slow approach of a fisherman's boat. Its oars dip in and out of the water in a steady rhythm, each stroke followed by a moment of stillness. The fisherman raises a hand in greeting, and the apothecary waves back. When he draws near, they exchange a few words. The fish have been scarce these past days, though the weather promises better luck next week. He offers a small perch from his basket, and in return the apothecary promises a pouch of dried thyme for the man's cooking pot. By midday, the sun is higher, its warmth drawing dragonflies to hover over the water. The apothecary takes a small loaf of rosemary bread from the satchel, along with a wedge of cheese wrapped in cloth. Lunch is eaten slowly, each bite taken with the unhurried, ease that only comes when there is no other task waiting. The bread carries the memory of yesterday's fare, and the cheese is sharp but smooth, pairing perfectly with the cold sip of water from a leather flask. As the afternoon deepens, the river seems to slow even more. Shadows from the willows lengthen across the water, and the calls of distant birds echo softly in the air. The apothecary leans back on the stone, eyes half closed, listening to the world's smaller sounds. The tick of a beetle's legs against a reed, the faint plink of water drops from an overhanging branch, the rustle of grass when a small vole darts past. When it is time to leave, the walk back is even slower than the walk out. The sun is beginning its slow descent, and the path is lit in a warm, amber glow. In the fields, farmers are gathering the last of the day's work, stacking sheaves of barley in tidy rows. Passing the edge of the village, the apothecary stops to give the fisherman's perch to the widow who lives 2 doors down, knowing she will make a fine stew of it. The shop is quiet and cool on return, its shelves unchanged but somehow softer in the evening light. The meadowsweet and mint are placed on the counter, their scents mingling gently in the air. The perch's gift has been delivered, and the satchel hangs empty by the door. A small fire is lit, and a pot of water is set to boil for tea. The apothecary sits at the counter, the day's impressions settling like silt in clear water. The weight of the sun on the shoulders, the smell of the riverbank herbs, the sound of the fisherman's oars. As the light fades, the shutters are drawn, and the village slips into its Sunday night stillness. The church bells toll softly in the distance, a reminder that the week will begin anew in the morning. But for now, there is only the quiet, the faint crackle of the fire, and the knowledge that this day has been kept, not in the ledger, but in memory, whole and unhurried. And so our week with the apothecary comes to its gentle end. The shop is dark now, the shelves resting in shadow, the scent of dried herbs lingering in the cool night air. Outside, the village sleeps under a soft blanket of stars, the river glinting faintly beyond the fields. Through these days, we have watched the steady rhythm of life unfold, the grinding of roots, the weighing of powders, the greetings of neighbors, and the small kindnesses shared between one day and the next. This world is far behind us in time, yet its pace and its quiet hold something we still seek. The comfort of familiar places, the satisfaction of work done with care, the deep rest that comes when the day's tasks are complete. As the shutters close on the apothecary's shop, let your mind drift on the scent of mint and thyme, the sound of river water, and the warm glow of a lamp in the dark. Sleep well, and may tomorrow find you in gentle company.